Good afternoon. So I appreciate I am the last thing between you and lunch, so I will get through this as expeditiously as I can. Thank you to the LifeArc organization for what an amazing morning this has been. Absolutely incredible. I appreciate not everybody was here for the whole session, but nicely sort of topped and tailed by the MHRA. So Lawrence talking this morning about what the MHRA are going to be doing about rare disease. And he and I have got a very close partnership looking all the way through the other things that were talked about around clinical trials, the patient perspective, so important, data-enabled clinical research, as well as what we can do within HDRS. And so we have a very close working relationship, which we will talk about in a little bit. I was really, really touched by the last patient panel. It was incredible, actually, for those of you who missed it. And I went and asked the patient speaker if I could quote something she said this afternoon, which was, "We are not data and statistics. We are human beings that are going to benefit from whatever research you are doing." And if you kind of need to know what HDRS is about, it is that. It is actually allowing researchers in a very patient-led way to do the research with the data and the statistics that is going to benefit them. And so we were announced by the Prime Minister just over a year ago. Everyone talks about the very generous backing, the investment of 500 million from the government and 100 million from Wellcome. The first 9 months of the life of HDRS was set up by the government, where they went out and brought in the chair, so Baroness Nicola Blackwood, who started in November, and I joined in January of this year. The Wellcome Trust have very kindly been hosting us, so that's where you can find us. We're in the building on Euston Road. And in a few months' time, hopefully when we're incorporated, we'll be moving up to the Wellcome Genome Campus in Hingston. So why did HDRS get created? This group, looking at an awful lot of very friendly faces in here, so I probably don't need to tell, particularly not some of you, why. So HDRS was created because, and this is actually a government-issued diagram, this blob. There is a version with words on it, but it's so small I didn't see any point in bringing it. Each of those blue circles represents a major data asset. And just to give you a sense of reality, if you know anything about the regional secure data environment, that's the inner ring in the middle of the NHS ring. And that's largely how we think about data within England. So HDRS is a UK-wide initiative, so working very closely with the devolved nations. We've been asked to go and review the entire data landscape. We have the mandate to put everything on the table. That kind of differentiates us from some of the previous efforts. And we've been asked to go and make recommendations about how we can pull that data in a way that is accessible to researchers in unprecedented ways. We all know at the moment it's really difficult to navigate. We know that it's unpredictable. We know that there's poor data operability, and we know that that's creating delays to really valuable research. So for those of you who don't know me, my background is actually from industry, running clinical trials. Most recently, I was the Chief Development Officer of Moderna, which is a vaccine company. But before that, the 5 best years of my career, without doubt, were spent at Shire doing rare disease research. The way you get to work with patient groups, the way you get to bring life-saving treatments that have such a big impact on people's lives is phenomenal. But actually, the data landscape in rare disease is so complex, navigating registries. And sadly, people also hold onto data because they have created that around a particular area of patients. And they're not quite sure what's going to happen to it if they start sharing it. One of the things HDRS really wants to do is work with some of those patient groups and some of the researchers and really understand how we can bring data together to really enable the best possible research, the best possible clinical trials, and work with MHRA to actually get those treatments to the patients who need them. So patients will be the North Star of HDRS. This was something I said at the first time I spoke. I said every time I speak. We know that trust is incredibly fragile, and particularly at the moment where health data is actually in the news a lot more than it normally is. We know that we've got to spend a lot of time building an HDRS that's sustainable, that is safe and secure, and that has data privacy and patients right at the heart of what we're doing. So we've spent a lot of time thinking about the governance, thinking about how we will engage continually with patients and the public, and thinking about how we're going to communicate very transparently. Just to be clear, we're not yet incorporated, so we are still under the Department of Health. We should be incorporated soon, and then we will be able to set up our own processes and procedures and governance. We've also spent a lot of time working to look at the technical architecture that HDRS will need to have. So the Wellcome Trust commissioned a piece of work with Emirates Health. Will, go and ask Will questions if you want to know about that. I can see him over there, sitting next to Ellie, who also worked on it, which was a piece of work that the Wellcome did with Emirates. The government also commissioned a piece of work looking at what the customer needs and also the commercial value of data, which is a really interesting topic. And as part of that, they also went out and talked to patients and the public. And patients and the public have a very positive view of how their health data should be used for research, as long as the benefit from that goes back into the healthcare system. For those of you who were here this morning, you heard Lawrence talk about the NHS. And I think he is right. The NHS could benefit so much from the improvements in healthcare that we can make by being the best possible place to do the innovative research, the innovative clinical trials, and the innovative approaches to market approval that we can do here. We have spent a lot of time, and I haven't got around to everybody yet, and I know there are people in this room who are still waiting for emails from me. I promise I will get to you. Everyone was laughing yesterday about would there be enough driver projects, and I was on the team call for 1 hour and received 3 driver projects into my email during 1 hour. So it gives you a sense of the enormous enthusiasm that we have. We've spent a lot of time with people at different groups, different associations. The ABPI have been incredibly welcoming to us. We went and spoke to their board last week to really get the views of industry. The BIA released their health data strategy yesterday. We've spent a lot of time with them and their membership who've provided fabulous input. And that was a little bit different, actually, in some ways from the big pharma industry, so that really got us thinking. We've spent a lot of time talking to the charities, to academics. We're doing a piece of discovery work at the moment, looking at our regional SDEs, digitrials, open safely. The funding for all of those comes to us at the moment in a run and maintain mechanism. And we're really trying to understand how we structure HDRS to provide the service that all of those groups need. So you're not worried about whether your PhD student will actually get the data before their PhD clock has run down, or whether the pharma company you work for will actually have moved on to a different disease area by the time the data is available to them. What we have heard from everybody loud and clear about HDRS is they want us to be seen as people as a convener. Please bring the community together. Help us try and understand how we can align and collaborate around health data and what is going to be the best thing we can do for everybody. We've also heard people talking about how can we enable. Everyone is so frustrated. It is unbelievable, the level of frustration, and I completely understand that people want us to try and unlock that. It will take time. We can't do that overnight. And we're going to need everybody to actually want to really see HDRS to be successful for us to be able to unlock access to data the way you all want to be able to use it. And they want us to really amplify. My commitment to everybody is we're not in the market of breaking things or starting with a blank sheet of paper. That would be pointless. HDRS is built on the incredible things that have already been achieved. And we are here to really invest and amplify what's working really well. But we also do have to all recognize as a community that we have to stop the things that aren't working so well or replace them with things or invest in things that could actually be better. When it comes to creating that single front door to health data research, we've been very, very clearly asked to create 4 specific capabilities. The first one is streamline and standardizing access to data for research. So people want to be able to come and find their data they want to be able to get access for the data, and they want a guaranteed service level of when they will get the green light and the data available. And that people are asking for us to commit to being able to do that in days and weeks rather than the months and years that it takes for some people today. We're being asked to create a capability to help the NIHR on their mission to accelerate clinical trial delivery. So this has originated from the ABPI, but we're hearing it from across the ecosystem. How can we find whether those patients exist, what the patient journey is of specific patients? Are they there? Where are they? Clustered in the country, all across the country, where are the sites? How can we build up those sites to have the capability to deliver on those clinical trials? And you have our strong commitment to start building out those capabilities as early as possible. Rare disease is obviously a very good place to start in data-enabled clinical trial capability. For a start, the patients are often very willing to be found. So they've opted in to research as a form of care. And so one of the things we really want to do is start building out those capabilities as soon as we're able to launch the service. The third one is something we're working really closely with the MHRA, and that is how do we enable faster risk proportion access to innovation. So if you were at the beginning of this session this morning, you heard Lawrence talk about the exact same thing. And we've already sat down and started to work really closely on do we start with rare disease? Where else do we work together across the MHRA and HDRS to ensure that the data that we have around patients working with developers enables us to give that earliest possible access to innovation to the patient? And the fourth capability that we're being asked very strongly to deliver on is to support a strengthened post-marketing surveillance capability. So this is once treatments, devices, drugs are out in the market, how are we measuring and monitoring what's happening and the healthcare benefit that gives patients and the public. So that's kind of what we are hearing at the moment. I'm quite sure there will be other parts of the service that will develop and grow over time. But certainly now, those are the common threads that we're hearing across industry, biotech, researchers, charities, and our partners across the government agencies that we're working with really, really closely. So for rare disease research, what does it really mean? So the diagram on the left was taken from the fabulous LifeArc respiratory meeting that I was fortunate enough to be invited to last month. I want to say last month. Yeah, the weeks are all blurring into one for me right now. I have no idea what's up or down. And so I think the rare disease space is obviously everything you've just heard me talk about. Yes, it obviously applies to cancer. It applies to large population diseases. But for rare disease, I think that's the opportunity for us to do something really, really specific. So we know that there is a wealth of data out there that we want to be able to access and enable researchers to pull together in unprecedented ways. We know that there is access to innovation, data-enabled clinical trials, finding patients, and in many ways having patient-led research actually happening within the clinical trial space. And we know that if we pull all of this together and work across the MHRA and the other parts of the government, that we can make lives of patients so much better. And I hope what you've heard in the session today is that incredible willingness and connection that's being formed between different parts of the ecosystem that maybe will start to feel a little bit different. Ways of working together where we are actually thinking about each other and the impact things will have on each other and the way we can talk to each other to enable things to change. And so I think there are a lot of us feeling really, really optimistic about what we can do right now in the UK with the investment in assets such as the Health Data Research Service. And with that, I will leave you with where we are trying to get to in this year. As I say, Chair and CEO appointed. We are working towards incorporation, hopefully towards the end of May, fingers crossed. Over the next couple of months, we're pulling together our strategy and delivery roadmap. We will be putting out a call for driver projects in the next few weeks. We're also launching our website, fingers crossed, at the end of this month. The reason I have to keep saying fingers crossed is because we're not incorporated yet, so things are a little bit out of my control, but that's the plan at the moment. And then we will be being quite public around our strategy as we develop it. We've committed to ensuring that we have patient and public input, that we're talking to all parts of the ecosystem so that people really understand the strategy we're developing and why. We have the ambition to have an MVP live by the end of this year. That's essentially a company that's operating, that has some driver projects and is looking at the technical transformation of the ecosystem. That is the commitment that we've made to the government as part of our year one business case. The years 2 to 4, before we become self-funding around 2030, is part of the strategy that we're developing at the moment. And so we look forward to keeping you informed and sharing our journey as we look to deliver the Health Data Research Service.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much, Melanie. It's fantastic to hear how the HDRS is being shaped into a national asset, to hear about your plans. We're delighted you started your career at Shire and that you've come along to the Respiratory Centre workshop and that you're here today so that rare disease is going to be embedded right from the very start. So thank you for that. Have we got time for one question? One question. Who would like to be the one person that asked the question? Harriet. Can we get a mic over to Harriet here?
Thank you. Just sort of following on from the panel we had before and thinking about that patient quote, how do you see the tension between researchers who think they own patient data and patients who think it should be stewardship of patient data?
It's a really good question. I think there's going to be a lot of conversations around data controllership actually coming up, and I'll put it on the table. The only way we can actually build the Health Data Research Service and have the right conversation is if we're prepared to have the conversation around controllership for research use. I'm not talking about direct clinical care, that's something else. I'm talking about how we use data for research. It is unbelievable the incredible things we were able to do in this country with COPE notices during the pandemic. And I think HDRS is considered the catalyst. Part of that mandate that I talked about is not only about putting all of the assets and all of the ways we access data on the table, but it's also that issue around how data access should be controlled, for want of a better word, and where that should sit. So we're working really closely with the policy team in the government at the moment. I think there's going to be a really healthy debate about that, where all perspectives need to be reviewed, but it's got to happen. If we're going to build the HDRS we want to, we've got to have that conversation. So good question. Thank you, Harriet.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Melanie.